Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and it's been a crazy week. As many of you may know, we are running all over the place trying to get you all the information that you need to know. We just interviewed the one and only Richard Gage today, as well as Barbara Honegger from AE 9/11 Truth, and we are now on the line with the one and only G. Edward Griffin, and we are very happy to be joined live by him. Hopefully, the connection holds up. As per usual, there's always the potential that YouTube might not support the resolution, or that a cell phone might not work one way or another. But you know how it is. It's technology. It's 2018, and the military has all the power, and we got all the peasant technology. So anyway, Mr. Griffin, thank you very much for joining us on the line here. We're going to be getting questions in from people on YouTube shortly. But as we await more people to join us live, can you tell us a bit about this fourth Freedom Force Congress that's coming up?
Oh yeah, I'd like to talk about that because I'm working around the clock in preparation for it, Josh. By the way, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I know that your audience has got to be really on the higher end of the knowledge scale. Either that, or they think they think they've come to La La Land or something and they have to get off. But anyway, I think that talking to your friends and people that know what you're saying is exactly where I belong. It's kind of, I guess the current phrase is to call it your tribe. So anyway, thanks for that. Yeah, and I'm anxious to talk about this event because it's been an experience. First of all, I'd just start off by explaining it. In the title of the event is the future of money and cryptocurrency. Well, that sounds kind of uninteresting and all that, but I came up with a little slogan, an intro to get people in the mood for what I'm really talking about, and this is what it says. It says, if you have the courage, I will show you the future of money. So that was the hook, I wanted to explain really that this isn't just about money. We all heard about money. It's interesting topic, and we will be talking about its history, what what is good money, what is bad money, and what causes inflation, and where the Federal Reserve fits into all of this, and the usual stuff that's very valuable, and most people really don't understand it, or if they have some knowledge of it, it's thin. So that's going to be in there, but the real purpose of this thing is to talk about what lies ahead. And by throwing the cryptocurrency element into it, a lot of people thought in the beginning that how great Bitcoin was, or how they got to get out there, and the best coin to buy now is probably Ethereum or Litecoin, or something like that, having to do with making money in the speculative market. Well, we'll have some of that at this event too, but none of those are really the main thrust. The main thrust really is looking to the future, and I think this will come to a real, it'll be a jolt, let's say, for many of your listeners to hear me say that the cryptocurrency is the dream, the absolute dream of central bankers and governments. It's not at all what we have been told, that this was going to take care of those bankers. We'll be outside of the banking system at last. We'll have privacy and anonymity at last. All of these things we've heard about the cryptocurrencies, which are in some degree true, but when you stand back and get the larger picture and see some of the elements that have been going on behind the scenes, like we find out that, this is a repeat somewhat of what I discovered when I was doing my research for my book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Those of your audience who've read that book will recall that one of the things that the bankers did when they were trying to sell the Federal Reserve System back in the years between 1910 and 1913 is that the top bankers who had written the bill, had written the Federal Reserve Act. It was their baby, but they decided to play a little psychological game on the public, and some of the top bankers began to speak against the Federal Reserve proposal. Of course, nobody knew that they had written the darn thing,
Mm-hmm.
but they knew psychologically that a lot of people probably were skeptical about this new banking law. But if they heard the bankers were against it, why, hey, Maud, I guess, have you heard this? The banks don't like that bill. It must be pretty good. That kind of thing. So they used that psychology to sell something that they had created, but they did it in part by convincing the people that they were opposed to it, or that somehow it was going to control them or hurt them. I see the same thing happening now. I finally get all the facts together in the last 4, 5, 6 months. Mm-hmm. It's all coming together now, and I see that that's exactly what we're facing with cryptocurrencies. They were aware that the future was going to hold a new kind of currency with a digital basis, long before most of us, certainly long before I ever thought about it. And we discovered now that they were quietly preparing for it. They were funding some research on it. They were getting into positions of leverage in the whole thing, and they even began to help promote the whole idea as some way to control the big bad banks. And wow, once that picture snapped into focus, I really became alive, and I said, well, why? Where is this going? Yeah. And I'm making a short summary. I'll come to the end of it now, which is where it's going is a cashless society. And that, of course, is the end of the line for personal liberty. So that's what we'll be talking about. That's the main thrust of our event. And I think your listeners especially would be able to appreciate the deception that's being used in this whole field more than most people.
Yeah, and Mr. Griffin, there's several things to get to with what you just said. Now, I think it's very important for us to get together and have these conversations because I do think that there is a confusion between, for example, what China and India and Sweden and Australia and, the rest, these massive government powers pushing to a technocratic, cashless society, that versus in a lot of cases like China's been attacking Bitcoin, for example. They've been attacking cryptocurrencies, trying to ban them, the ones that are decentralized, while propping up their own banker kind of cashless system. I find this to be quite concerning because, of course, we must always understand, and I know you do, of course, the difference between centralization and decentralization and how something can be utilized as a tool for good and for evil. We see that with, for example, using cryptocurrencies like Ripple, which the banks love, and the banks have been using Ripple, governments have been using Ripple, and then there's that which is scarce, that which, they can only print a certain amount of it, that which cannot be heavily centralized outside of, banking infrastructure, etc. What do you think about the future of cryptocurrency from the more positive end of the scale?
Well, that's, of course, a very good point, Josh, because you can't fix something unless you know what's wrong with it. And right now, most people don't even know that there's anything wrong, potentially wrong, with this system of cryptocurrencies. They think it's all wonderful. It's all immune to this kind of centralization that you're describing. So we have to understand what's broken and what's wrong. But the whole idea, the reason we want to do that is so we can fix it, or we can avoid having to use it and build some other structure to replace it. And we do have a couple of people there coming to our event who have some pretty good ideas of how to do that. And they're very positive about it. But we have to understand the dangers and what the trap is that's being set for us. Now, there's a fellow there by the name of Kent Lewis who's done more research on that topic than anyone I know of. And he's pointed out that he's shown me the documents and the ownership trails and who's owning what companies behind the scenes and all this sort of thing. And what they're trying to do is create I guess you would just call it a clearinghouse, much like the Federal Reserve is a clearinghouse for all checks from all banks. They all clear through the Federal Reserve to go from one bank to the other. So at the point where they go through that funnel, that clearinghouse, then all the information is revealed, or at least have a pretty good grab of it. And what they're doing is building a similar clearinghouse right now, where all of the different cryptocurrencies will be able to be interchanged with each other. Oh, how wonderful! If you've got some little cryptocurrency of your choice and you want to buy something that's only available in some other cryptocurrency or even in a U.S. dollar, you go through the clearinghouse. And you still have your privacy out in your private chain out there, but when it goes through the clearinghouse, all of a sudden the banks and the governments have access to it. And as it goes through there, of course, they can take out their cut, their little share. They can remove taxes from your accounts. If you're in a cashless society, it's this. All they have to do is just every transaction you make, take their little 0.5% or 100%, depending on your popularity with the government.
Well, of course, if it's in the bank, it's not yours. It's, as long as it's going through a banking system like that, of course, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the point though was that these people, these bankers and politicians have long ago seen this as an opportunity, and I was surprised to find out that they have very definite plans to force all of the cryptocurrencies to go through a central clearinghouse. And most people will like it because, at last they can buy things with their cryptos. They can buy anything with their cryptos, including, gasoline, pay their rent, buy a cup of coffee.
Convenience.
And they'll say, this is what we're doing. So that's what we're looking at, and I think people need to know what's coming ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I want our audience to know, send questions. The super chat ones will go to the top because I know there's a lot of people commenting right now, so it's hard to keep up with everyone. I do want to mention, we have the ACC chain. There's definitely moves being made to attempt to take over the cryptocurrency market for the point of, benefiting the bankers, benefiting the government. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, they could do that with many different tools. Cryptocurrencies are beneficial to them if they're not, complete privacy coins, etc., like that. But I do notice that there's also a few assumptions, mostly with, and I plan on having a conversation with Kent at this event because I respect people on either side of this argument. I think it's an important conversation to be had. SDR is programming language to the coder community, so it could be very assumptive to see SDR in code and assume that it's a special drawing rights. I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, and we need evidence, and we need to crack the whip and say this is what is going on and this is how it can affect us. All these conversations need to be had, and one of the most major concerns I do have is the out-of-control speculation. Rather than looking to innovate the market in a way that we can actually free humanity, free the monetary system, have competing currencies, rather than have all these people just trying to get rich really fast and thinking that the sky is the limit, which is a huge problem with greed and how we go the direction of impatience and settling for convenience rather than what's best for us. And I think that is something we really need to have a conversation about. We have someone on YouTube by the name of Rika, the Hopeful Voluntarist, who says hi to G. Edward Griffin. Have
hi back.
Make sure to send questions, guys. I see a lot of comments. Make sure to send questions. So for the event, how can people get involved in this event? I see that there are still quite a few tickets left. I'm seeing on the website as of a few minutes ago for general admission, it says 19 remaining tickets, and Inner Circle is 38 remaining tickets. And then, of course, there is the live stream. Can you go into how people can get involved in this?
Yeah, actually 19 or 20 tickets is not very much. We still have, 9 days to go. I'm even surprised we have that many chairs left. But so it's a small group, an intimate group, and we understand that most people can't just jump in the cars or get in an airplane and go to a cryptocurrency conference unless their motive is money. Now if people thought that if they went to the conference and they could learn some secret where they could turn their $1,000 into $500,000, man, they'd be there regardless of the cost. And that's the way it was, a few months ago. Everybody was interested in cryptos because they saw it as the path to very fast wealth because of the uptick in the price. And then when the price crashed down, well, nobody's interested anymore. They're selling off, and and so forth. and I just wanted to emphasize that I do personally think that there's an opportunity to still make insane profits in this crypto market. I think, it's a volatile market, up and down, and people complain that why do I always buy high and sell low? Well, it's because they choose to do so. When the market crashes and goes down and they have an opportunity to buy low, they sell because the market's going down. I better get rid of this stuff. So it's human nature, and I still think that great profits lie ahead if that's what people are interested in, and I imagine most of us are. And there will be people there at the event. Some of our speakers will be addressing that issue, like Jeff Berwick, for example. He's probably at the head of his class in that particular department.
Absolutely.
And he's going to be talking about that. But
Mr. Griffin,
the real reason is not the profit potential. It's a look at the future.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people on both sides. You have Alan Myers, you have Patrick Wood, lots of very interesting people speaking at this conference from multiple different angles. Of course, our own John Sneisen is speaking there as well. We got a question from Josh Romportal, who says, ask G. Edward Griffin, why would people use the clearinghouse if there's a fee and you lose privacy if there's still easy peer-to-peer transactability?
Well, there are a couple of reasons that I believe they're planning on that people will be using it. Now, obviously, Josh wouldn't because he understands some of the less obvious things. But the average gum-chewing public doesn't really think about this and probably doesn't even care too much about privacy. You see, there are only, probably less than 1% of the population really involved in cryptocurrencies now, probably 1 to 3%. So the major market at 97, 98, 99% lies ahead. And when the public finally jumps into that, and everybody's using cryptos, then most people won't care about that. And they won't even think about it. All they know is that, if I keep my little private crypto over here, which is nice, it looks pretty, and my friend told me I should have it, but I can't buy anything with it. All I can do is exchange it with others who hold the same currency, or I'm hoping that I'll get rich on it, but I can't buy anything with it, So all of a sudden, if they go to the clearinghouse, they can buy everything with it, and it's an almost instant transaction, whereas if they stay in these blockchains, the trading time is, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and some of the fees are very high. So there'll be kind of a triple effect there. People will do it because it's a fast transaction. They'll do it because they have confidence in the institution that's offering it. They'll do it because they can buy anything, and mostly because they won't even think or know about the other issues that we all talk about.
And of course, out of desperation, the banks and the governments are going to do anything they can to maintain control and grow that control complex. They always have, and it would be crazy to think otherwise. So of course, they're going to try and make the best out of what I believe is to be a true revolution that's happening, a monetary revolution, regardless of, you look at blockchain technology, and I always equate it to a gun. You can use a gun to slaughter a whole bunch of innocent people, but you can use that same gun to save all those people from being slaughtered. And with blockchain technology, you can enslave humanity with centralized blockchain, but you can also overthrow much of what enslaves humanity by using decentralized blockchain technology, depending how you use it and who can take advantage of it in which way. We have a question from YBT Oklahoma, who says, isn't the only way they could enslave us if we are forced to use a government-issued crypto wallet attached to our identity, which would destroy the purpose of decentralization?
Well, I don't think it's the only way. It's probably the ultimate way because, and by the way, there are people in Congress right now working up draft legislation to do exactly that, to force us to use cryptocurrencies that have been authorized, approved, checked out, safe, all the things for our protection. So, yeah, the coercion element is always present among these collectivist schemes. So, yes, but a better way than forcing us is to trick us into thinking that we're doing something that we're not, trick us into thinking we're improving our position, or that we're beating the banks, or that we're obtaining privacy from the government. Oh, let's do that because get out of the system, when in fact we're getting deeper into the system. So I think deception is the easier way to get everybody to use it rather than coercion.
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, a lot of people would say the internet was created by the government to keep tabs on the populace. And I would agree that that's very likely the case, especially the fact that the government has lost control over so much of the information war that's going on, leading to people being able to end the bread and circuses of the mainstream media to a great extent, where so many people are flocking away from mainstream media programming, from sports, from Hollywood movies, etc. We are seeing a mass influx to the internet, so of course they're desperate and they're trying to control the narrative on the internet now to a great extent. Well, I would feel like there's a lot of similarities with that, and for example, cryptocurrencies. If the government were to create a Bitcoin, wouldn't that be leaving the door open for anyone to create an innovation on that technology and grow with that and break outside of the government system with the blockchain technology? Aren't they kind of opening up a can of worms in the case of potentially creating such a huge network or a huge infrastructure?
Well, I don't think so, Josh, because I think these people are too smart for that. If they create a Bitcoin or a category of Bitcoins, well, as they did when they created the blockchain, that came, that I don't know who this mythological person supposed to is. I think that was actually a committee, a group of people, an institution, perhaps a banking institution. I don't know, but anyway, when they created that, or if they ever create one that will be a government crypto, they will build in all kinds of little back doors with it that they won't tell anybody about. So it will serve their purpose. If it doesn't serve their purpose, they're not going to create it.
Yeah, but of course, like I mentioned, there's other ways that other people can build on that, and we see things like Monero, for example, which is a privacy coin. I'm always skeptical whether or not anything is completely private, but nonetheless, I mean, any of us can create our own competitive currency, and while Bitcoin might not, get replaced as the top cryptocurrency, there are about 2,500 cryptocurrencies in the world as of today. And I mean, they can't regulate all of them. It becomes rather futile after a while trying to regulate all of these cryptocurrencies. And like I mentioned earlier, we have China and India cracking the whip on cryptocurrencies that are decentralized while pushing, their own banker digital currencies, which I think is rather alarming to say the least. Obviously, a cashless society is a perfect globalist scenario to be able to control humanity. And you have a bail-in regime. You can't do a run on the bank. You have no money in the bank. It's all digital, and we're already seeing that today to a great extent. I think it's only about 3%, if that, of all cash in the United States is actually cash. The rest is all digital. We've been moving towards that society in many places. In Canada, only 12% of people actually go to banks themselves. Everything else is done online. I mean, it is a massively growing system, and we should all be very careful about the direction that's going. And with that said, I got a few people asking about Deutsche Bank, because obviously Deutsche Bank has seen some better days. They are getting audited right now. They are getting rated for their involvement in some major scandals. They for money laundering from the Danske Bank scandal. They had to do a new living will test for the Federal Reserve. They were downgraded by the S&P. I mean, they are not looking good. Their share price has been crashing on a monthly basis. Do you think that we are potentially seeing a massive desperate move as these banks come kind of, by the looks of it anyway, tumbling down?
Well, I have to admit I haven't researched the background information on Deutsche Bank, but I'm kind of a skeptic about these things. It could be exactly as you said, but I think not. I think it's probably what do they call it? Internecine warfare, something like that, where brothers gang up against one brother because they don't like him. He's violated the compact. I don't know. I think that Deutsche might be made sacrifice it, let the world think, oh, we'll get rid of these bad banks if we have to, when actually it just might be that they broke out and maybe they have some enemies within the banking system. Now, I don't know that that's true, but I would be more likely to think that something like that was going on. When we had our own crashing banks here back in 2008, Lehman Brothers and all the rest, there was one that was allowed to go. It fell into disfavor with the other banks, and it was sacrificed. It was raided. It was destroyed. But the other banks were doing just fine, thank you. And we find it wasn't because that bank was any weaker than the rest. He just became unpopular with his fellow fraternity members in the club. So I suspect something like that, but I really don't know. I know that most of what drives the decision-making in the banking world is not what you think. This much I know. Most of it has ulterior motives or hidden agendas, and there's a lot of pretense going on. Mm-hmm. And I personally, I've forgotten who said it first, but I think it was either Winston Churchill. But anyway, it was somebody, a well-known figure back the last century. Yeah. He said that if people only knew that banking institutions were the most corrupt institutions in the world, and that people think that because they go to great extent to great effort to make it look like they're very conservative, they dress conservative, they have big vaults on the door, they have guards and everything, and they have long questionnaires that you must fill out if they're going to lend you money. You think these people are really totally honest and they care about integrity. He said, no, these are the most corrupt institutions in the world. Mm-hmm. And so at first I thought that was an extreme statement. And then the more I've researched into this over the years, I said, yeah, that's probably a gentle way of saying it. Yeah. So anyway, when the banks are talking about, oh, we've got to clear the scandal out, no, they don't. They live on scandal. It's and fraud. Mm-hmm. Every bank in the world, every major bank, let's say, in the world, is probably guilty of everything that Deutsche Bank is being criticized for.
Absolutely, and that's why we've seen in recent days J.P. Morgan get called out for the silver and gold spoofing, even though for years it was just Deutsche Bank, HSBC, and Scotiabank, according to court rulings over the past 10 years, as if not every major bank in the world was doing the same thing. A lot of exposure is happening at Wells Fargo, other banks. Let's all remember that these are, organized crime syndicates. They're cartels. The governments, banks, and central banks all work together, in order to push people into dependence and debt slavery. And absolutely. So we got a question from Rika, the hopeful voluntarist, who asks what you think is the best way to dismantle the Federal Reserve, in your opinion.
Well, that's a really good question. We could talk for hours on that, but let's just shorten it down. I think it takes basically 2 steps. Now, these are simple, but not easy. The first step is there has to be an awakening among the leadership element of society to realize that we have to do something drastic to reform banking. That means to get rid of the Federal Reserve cartel, as you correctly described it. It's not going to happen unless there's sufficient public support for it. Now, that doesn't mean 50 or 60% of the population, because that percentage will never get it. They'll always be following whatever they read in the newspapers or whatever they hear on the radio or whatever. But we're talking about maybe 3% of the population, the leadership level of all society. So the first step is to get the word out to that 3% of the leadership in our country, that they come to the realization that, yes, we need to do this. And then the next thing is we simply need to pass legislation that will take coercion out of the banking system, take government out of it, and cause banks to just follow the normal rules of honesty, integrity, and keeping their contracts that any other business has to follow, and take the monopoly element out of the money system, let people choose whatever they want to for money, They want to choose silver or gold or Federal Reserve notes or yen or
Bitcoin?
Deutschmark or whatever, Bitcoin. Yeah, absolutely. Let the free market decide. The good money will rise to the top. The rotten money will fall to the bottom and rot out. And the Federal Reserve will become history. And we don't have to declare it's outlawed or anything like that, although I think we should. But if we simply took away from the Federal Reserve the power to force people to use its money, it would go away on its own.
And yeah, I feel like, and a lot of people find this to be kind of a strange take, but Venezuela, as we've seen this massive currency crash, total collapse, people have been forced to go into the free market, to barter, to use, for example, Dash, the cryptocurrency, in order to trade and buy food, to break out of the bolivar. They've been forced to, and there's somewhat of a monetary revolution happening there. And I've said a few times in recent days, I feel like we could actually see Venezuela come out of this as a massive powerhouse from the monetary position, as all these people have been forced into the reality of a hyperinflating currency, forced into the reality that their government isn't out there to help them to make their lives better. They're there to push them into dependence, as we've seen, especially the crazy implementations and laws and regulations by Maduro and Chavez before him. This notion that people should be completely subservient to the state and these banking powers, people are breaking free from that. And we saw that in Croatia before as well. We are seeing that in Sudan. We are seeing that, Argentina is, I shouldn't include them because they go into hyperinflation every 10 years, but otherwise, we are seeing what appears to be a massive monetary revolution happening there, whether people like it or not. And it's a very sad situation. A lot of people are suffering from it. But is there any truth to potentially just seeing the dollar come crashing down and learning from the consequences? Because I feel at the same time, trying to get legislation passed for the Federal Reserve regarding, ending the Fed, it's almost like a lost cause because it's been going on forever, and it's like expecting government, which creates most of these problems, to fix the same problems they create, like cancer, curing cancer. What do you think, Mr. Griffin?
Well, I think the key is in your phrase, we will learn the lesson, or people will learn the lesson. I think most people have already learned the lesson. But the problem is the people don't decide. It's the politicians who decide these things, and the politicians do not represent the people. That's the problem. The issue is that most people in the world today think that they live in a democracy or some variant of a democracy, and because we have that word attached to it, they think that somehow they are determining their own political destiny by going to the ballot, going to the voting booths and checking off a ballot. They don't realize that the voting is rigged, the count of the votes is wrong. They don't realize that even if they elect the candidate of their choice, that the candidate of their choice is actually on the other side. All of these things that are behind the scenes that people don't realize. So it makes no difference if the people learn the lesson. Because the people in the present system are not going to change anything. We've got to change those seats of power in various governments and in all the power centers. That means the media, the schools, everything, especially the media and the schools. I mentioned those because those are the institutions that formulate attitudes and opinions about things.
The indoctrination systems.
Indoctrination, yeah. So the system today operates on deceit, and people willingly accept these things, even though they don't like the outcome, because they've been told that, well, that's the will of the people, and the people want it because look at the elections. Look who they elected. So the people elected this tyrant, so that's what they want. Well, maybe they did elect him, but only because he fooled them. We see that going on right now. There are people, we've been reading it in the news, there are certain candidates who are pretending to pretending to go against the Democrat insanity, all this extremism on the left in the Democrat Party, and they're out there saying, yeah, we got to put an end to that. And then Veritas does a hidden camera interview with some of their staff people at the election office, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, but he doesn't really mean that. He's going to be the best Democrat you ever saw." So it's the whole system is run on deception. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's incredible once you go down that rabbit hole when you realize the left, the right, it's all collectivism. It's all different flavors of collectivism, and people will say what they need to say to get you on your knees and bow down to them. Apathetic. We saw, the anti-war people become apathetic under Obama when he was dropping all those bombs. Now we have the anti-war people of the right becoming apathetic when Trump is doing it. It's very sad to watch this pendulum kind of go back and forth, and we need to understand that it's not left or right, it's collectivism, and it's something that you've done such a great job for so long educating people on. I got a comment from Return Free Risk that says, Josh, why does Canada create so many libertarians? I wish that were the case. Otherwise, I wouldn't have moved to the United States. Let's see. We got a comment from Kat.
We need to know what is that number? Like 10 or 10,000?
Yeah. So many libertarians, as in, all 10 of them, and they're all living in Alberta, Canada. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that, guys. But hey, if that's the way it's going, I'm all for that. I'd love to see that, but I don't have a whole lot of optimism for that. We got a Kat in Canada who said 2008 did not wake others up. Here we are still. I would note that 2008 never ended. We are still watching that system, the same one that should have completely crashed to the ground, be propped up. 10 years later, the banks are still bankrupt. The institutions are still completely insolvent. It's all just on paper, this fake veneer of success and prosperity. And it's exactly what we've been dealing with this massively centralized, manipulated system forever. What do you think, Mr. Griffin? I mean, are we still in like that same scenario that we were in 2008? Is this just like a perpetuation of it?
That's my opinion. Yeah, we go from one party to the next based on rhetoric, throwing the rascals out. Oh, we'll clean out that corrupt group and we'll bring in our people, and then we find out that our people are really doing the same thing. There's been no major change in substantial policy in the last probably, I'm going to guess, 80 years, maybe pushing 100 years. And I think that should be a lesson to people, regardless of whether the Republicans are in or the Democrats are in, regardless of what the campaign speeches are all about. The policies don't change, really. And when I say policies, the really important policies are what? Our national sovereignty is one of them. Are we going to remain as a real nation, or are we going to get gobbled up in this global governance thing, as we have been incrementally doing for quite a few decades now? It's reaching momentous proportions now. The national sovereignty issue. And the other one is, who's going to make our money? Is it going to be the cartel called the Federal Reserve, or is it going to be real money returned to the people? Those are the two biggest policies, I think, there are. And you'll find absolutely zero difference on those policies between the Republican and the Democrat Party. So what else matters?
Yeah, it's like an incremental frog boil. The left grows a government, then the right comes in under the guise of shrinking the government and manages to grow it still. And then the left comes in again, says, oh, these guys shrunk the government, we need to grow it. And it's just like an incremental frog boil. Vote for one or the other, red or blue, Pepsi or Coke, and then it just perpetuates forever. I think the answer comes down to us, the individuals. It's so important that we, as individuals, create our own groups, as you've gone into, power centers, to be able to, take back our freedom. Because the government, it doesn't give us freedom. The government can only take freedoms away. Guaranteed freedom is within us. It isn't given to us by any governing body. So it's so important that we fight for our own freedoms and not ask government to, give us freedoms. It seems like pretty much an oxymoron. Mr. Griffin, we are getting to the 40-minute mark here. So for those that are just joining us, can you let everyone know why they should? I know you kind of mentioned this earlier, but we got a fluctuation of viewers coming in all the time here. Why they should check out this money and cryptocurrency event, where they can buy tickets, and what you think the main highlight will be of this December event in Paso Robles, California.
Well, let me give you the highlights first, and I think the best way to do that is just to read to you a rather pretty short statement that appears in our flyer that we've been handing out. So here it is. The high priests of money in their temples called central banks long ago anticipated that their arcane secrets eventually would be revealed, and they would have to invent a new deity to replace it. That deity has been invented and is called distributed ledger technology. Its beta model is called blockchain, and its first use for money is called Bitcoin. New models are being tested and rapidly deployed. The end of this process is a cashless society, which will place humanity under micro-control by the same high priests who now control fiat money. It is being offered to the faithful as a mysterious and benevolent new God. That is the theme of this. Of course, a lot of other issues surrounding that will be discussed. And believe me, I think it's going to be a very informative event. And we urge you to attend in person or watch live stream. And it's coming up on next weekend. It's December 8 and 9. The event is going to be broadcast live from Paso Robles, California, at the La Bella Serra Hotel. And if you want to know more about it and how to get involved, you have a reservation either for attendance or live stream, the website is moneyandcryptos.com. Moneyandcryptos.com.
Well, I'm very excited about this event, Mr. Griffin. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. I think that there's a lot of constructive conversation to be had here on both sides. I think both sides can learn a thing or two about this system, because it's not all good and it's not all bad. I think that there are upsides and downsides.
I'm glad you said that, because I do want to emphasize that our speaker lineup is not all going to be agreeing with each other. Some people taking opposite points of view. We think that's the only way to get to the bottom of this, is to hear both sides.
So it's interesting to see that there are still people out there that want to hear both sides, which is a nice thing. It feels good. When I go to California, usually it's one side and no one is allowed to say anything else. You know how it is in California these days. But, it's,
yeah, I do.
being offended, all that kind of stuff. So it's great to have diversity of thought. Diversity of thought is the most important form of diversity. I think that's very important to point out. I want to also thank Vasi for sending $5.55 Australian fiat notes. I very much appreciate that. For the time being, those fiat notes are useful to us. So that is very appreciated. And then the $6.99 Canadian by Rainy Steps, who said, get yourself a beer. I appreciate that. I will do that in California at this event, and I hope as many of you as possible. There's still quite a few seats left. Come out to this event in Paso Robles. We got it up on the screen. Make sure to go to Freedom Force International. Let me just get this on the screen here. It'll be easier for all of you. freedomforceinternational.org/4th Congress. 4th-Congress. I will post it in the chat box for all of you to click on. Also, make sure to press like on this video so that we get this through the YouTube algorithm and get it out to other people in the suggested videos. That's how it works here on YouTube, is if you don't press like and if you don't share, no one's going to see it, because we are shadow banned these days on this so-called speech platform. So make sure to share that around. I'm sure we could fill all of these seats easily and get a lot of people attending through the live stream. Lots to be talked about here. Let's have this diversity of thought, diversity of opinion. Let's have these conversations. The only way you learn is from countering your own viewpoint with other viewpoints that you might not agree with. I think that is crucial in this day and age. especially as there is so much happening with the cryptocurrency market, especially people getting really bullish over cryptocurrency at $20,000 for Bitcoin and then getting very bearish when it's low, which seems like it's the opposite of the way it should be, but that's the way that basic human general psychology seems to work, is that buy at the top, sell at the bottom, and lose your shirt. So guys, let's be very vigilant, be very aware of what's going on around us, do our own due diligence, and let's be smart about this. There's good, there's bad, there's ugly. That is what this whole event is all about, and I'm very excited to join you, Mr. Griffin. Thank you so much for joining us on the line today on our live stream.
Well, thanks a lot, Josh. I really appreciate being there, and I hope to see you and many of your friends also.
Excellent. All right, we're going to hang up on Mr. Griffin right now. That sounds bad. We're going to say goodbye for now, and we're going to wrap up this live stream. So I very much appreciate you all joining us. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.